the statement that the chairperson issues is based on discussions that have ensued in the committee. I don't know, because my person in particular is used to issuing statements that we don't know and we find them in the media space. So I'm happy with what Honorable Hermans is saying, that we must go and debate it in the next meeting, not now. Thank you, Chair.
Chairperson? Yes, Andre?
Ms. Mutawung, followed by Ms. Muwatse.
Okay, Mutawung and Muwatse in that order. If you can actually then come in.
Thanks, Chair. I'm covered by Honorable Mantashe.
Muwatse? Muwatse?
Yes, Chairperson. I'm also covered by the latter speakers. Thank you very much.
Okay, wonderful. Can I just check then on the agenda we've got before us? I'm sure members of the committee agree. Honorable McPherson, I'm sure in terms of the issue, there's actually a suggestion that we should actually have a discussion on the next meeting. I'm sure that concludes the measure. The agenda as presented, I assume that it's agreed to. If we can be able to then, there's a mover and a seconder, I hope that there's no objection. So if ever there's no objection, can we then proceed to actually pick up on the item consideration of the first draft of the third quarter as presented on our agenda? Can I then ask Secretariat to actually take us through to that with this agenda we have just adopted now?
Chairperson, we still have a challenge. Margot is on, so there we go. Chair, we've requested members to submit concluding remarks and recommendation for consideration. And we've received from the ANC, from the Democratic Alliance, and from the ACDP comments. What we have done is we have looked at the comments that they have proposed, and we just reworded it and advised accordingly, Chairperson. Now, Chair, we have to determine going forward, are we going to look at the full report, or we're going to look at the concluding remarks and recommendations submitted from each party and move forward on that basis? We seek advice from you on the matter. Off, Chair.
Sorry for that. Let's say maybe for the committee members, if we actually do have agreement, the report was circulated, but I think it might be helpful just on a quick executive summary, just to get the report presented, and then maybe take those inputs from the different political parties, and then be able to get to the discussion of taking the process forward. So unless maybe members think they've had enough time to look at the report, then we can look at the inputs of recommendations and conclusions. Can I just maybe get guidance from the committee members of how they suggest we proceed from here? Take the report briefly, and then look at inputs or contribution by parties, and then get to a point of actually taking the process forward. Can I get
Chairperson?
Should I
yes.
agree with the recommendation that we look at a summary, executive summary, and then take questions thereafter?
Or the line is not that good.
Chair, Mr. Cuthbert wants to speak, and Ms. Yaku.
Okay, let's actually get, was it Tring that was speaking earlier?
Yes, Chair, but Mr. Cuthbert and Ms. Yaku.
And Hermans.
And Ms. Hermans.
Cuthbert, Yaku, and Hermans, in that order.
Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Very simply say that I agree with your recommendation.
But it's my turn to speak.
Summary and then proceed. I thought you said that it was Tring.
Tring, can I actually say that we actually follow that now, then we can be able to get you, we had you. Cuthbert, Yako, and Tring.
I've already said my say. Thank you.
So I thought we said Cuthbert, Yako, and Tring.
No, Ms. Hermans. Thing is completed. Yeah.
Hermans, yeah, Tring, thanks very much for that. Cuthbert?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, I think that we've all received an opportunity to read through this particular report. And unless we have any amendments to propose to the Secretariat and yourself, then my suggestion is that we go forward with the relevant conclusions as well as recommendations from the party, decide on those, and then we can give it over to the Secretariat to finalize the report for adoption.
Yaku? Honorable Yaku? Honorable Yaku, can you hear me?
Thank you. Thank you. Jerry, go straight to.
The line is not very clear, Yaku.
I suggest Ms. Yaku put it on the chat, maybe then we can see what she's saying.
Okay. Okay, let's take Hermans.
Thank you, Chair. We have received this report a couple of weeks ago, I think, and we've had ample opportunity to peruse the report, as Honourable Cuthbert has said. So I don't even think it's necessary to have a high-level summary. I think we can go straight into the conclusions and into the recommendations. I so propose.
Thank you very much. Can I just check? It was Yaku who was not audible. Can I check if you still have a comment, Yaku? Okay, let's assume then that there's actually agreement that we proceed because the report has been circulated a few times, that we actually pick up on the contribution by parties. Can I actually then ask Secretariat to be able to actually pick up on the recommendations and contribution by parties? I'm sure you'll be able to take us through that process.
Chair, may I suggest that we start with the ACDP who submitted, and then we'll do the DA followed by the ANC who has more present recommendations and concluding remarks. If that can follow, and then we'll go take members through that.
Okay, I think that's in order. That's being accepted. Let's actually take, as you have said, Honourable Tring. It's the one race. So can I just say, Secretariat, please take us through. The ACDP will be the first one.
Yeah. Chair?
Yes.
Chairperson, the ACDP submitted 3 concluding remarks. You will see the first bullet point, and if Margo can show the red.
Can you hear me?
Chair?
Okay, who's coming? Okay, proceed. Someone is trying to get our attention because I know we were disrupted with Yako. If she actually gets through, we'll actually see, but I wasn't too sure if it might be her. Just proceed with the ACDP one.
Chair, the ACDP has submitted a proposal on top in black. We just reworded it in red as a proposal. So we have to hear from Mr. Thrink is happy with our interpretation of what he said, and then the committee can also look at it and either agree or disagree with what Mr. Thrink is proposing.
Honourable Thrink, just to take us through, because there are those adjustments, if ever you're actually comfortable with the additional information that is given, or it's in fact it's a rephrasing.
Yeah, rephrasing.
Yeah, because it's not actually changing the detail, but just Mr. Tring.
All right. I know that Andre has indicated that he's put out the adjustments in red, but unfortunately I'm not able to see them. So I don't know how am I going to be able to comment on the adjustments if I can't see them.
Chair, I've also emailed Mr. I also emailed Mr. Thrink the actual document as well. So if he can check on his computer, he should be able to see it.
Okay,
all right. I'm going there now. Just checking on the email. And Chair, unless you want to go to somebody else and come back to me, so we can go to the
DA, Chair.
Okay, let's go to the DA. Mr. Thrink, you can actually check your email then we'll pick you next. The DA1, I'm not sure, is everyone able to see the screen because it's being projected?
Yes, Chair.
You are all able to do. So, but Mr. Thring, it looks like there's a problem with your projection. Can we take the DA1? It's on the screen.
Yeah.
Chair, and then maybe you can take us through.
If I may, and I think Mr. Cuthbert and the DA can comment on this as well. There was 3 points that was raised by the Democratic Alliance. The first 2 points, Chair, we have the view as a secretariat that's a scheduling matter. It does not require the House to pronounce itself on that matter because the report is going to the House. So it's a programming matter that could be resolved within the committee itself, Chair. But I'll ask the Democratic Alliance to comment if they're okay with that, if they're fine with that, what we're proposing, Chair.
You say it is covered.
No, what I'm saying, Chair, is that the 2 matters raised by the Democratic Alliance relates more to a scheduling programming matter, and it's not within the doesn't fall within the scope of the report. So I'm asking you to check with the DA if they are okay with our interpretation of what we are saying, proposing, Chair.
Okay, let me get the
Mr. Cuthbert.
To that. Cuthbert.
Hi, Chairperson. Thank you very much. Chair, I'm very happy with the amendments as proposed by the Secretariat. I have no problem. I would just like an assurance from your side, from a programming perspective, that we can make those 2 things happen. One, that we get the steel briefing or steel industry briefing by the Minister as soon as at his earliest possible convenience. And then number 2, that we will get a fixed date from the Minister when he will come and present the Steel Master Plan as was agreed to before we went on to the COVID-19 induced lockdown, Chairperson.
Yeah, and I think on the next agenda item of our meeting after the part we're dealing with now, we will be able to actually look at that as well. No, I think let's actually agree that then we will look at the number 3 item as the addition.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Chair?
Yes.
If I may, Chair, it's a recommendation proposed by the Democratic Alliance. We just reworded it, Chair. We need to check with the Democratic Alliance if they are satisfied with the way we captured it there, Chair.
Okay. Can I ask the Cuthbert?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. We're happy with the way that it's been worded, and I'd just like to emphasize the importance of this particular item, Chairperson. If you look at the report that was provided to us by the department, you'll notice that only 135 out of 300 of this particular target was met, and I think it's important, considering the fact that firstly, the automotive industry plays a large role in our economy, and secondly, considering the circumstances we find ourselves in, that they are able to give us the relevant information as to whether they've improved the situation going forward. And I think in that respect, I would like to ask the committee to agree to the inclusion of this particular recommendation.
Okay, the amended as by Secretariat is agreed to by the DA. The DA's input is acknowledged by the committee. I'm not sure if ever there's any comments. Can we then actually note and acknowledge the DA? It's a recommendation, eh?
Yes. Other members of the committee need to indicate if they are what they view on the matter, and we need to proceed on that, Chair.
Let's check the honourable
Chairperson.
Yes,
Chairperson.
Yes.
The matter referred to is in the body of the report, and I think it would be useful for us to get a report as they have indicated. So I'm sure the ANC can support that recommendation.
Okay. All right. Are there any other comments? And I'm sure with the contribution of the Democratic Alliance, we would actually pick this up as the item we need to include on the conclusion and recommendations. Okay.
Chair?
Yes.
That concludes the DAA's contribution to the report, Chair. We can just go back to Mr. Thring, and then hopefully he has the opportunity to read through the email that we forwarded to him. But Marcus can put it up on the screen for other members to see.
Okay, Mr. Thring, I'm sure you're able to actually connect. And then
yes, Chair, I have. I've gone through the amendments. Obviously, not happy that under the recommendation, the first recommendation is said not to fall within the scope of this report. I can understand that, but so reluctantly, Chair, concede to that. Under the conclusions, the committee was concerned that the sectors that are able to increase employment, namely agriculture, mining, manufacturing sectors, have come under strain. I think it's just a statement, and maybe if I could add, and that the committee works towards supporting factors which would mitigate the growth of these, the reduction in growth of these sectors, something to that effect.
Okay, can you repeat it again and commit towards the Mr. Thring?
So, yeah, so it reads, the committee was concerned that the sectors that are able to increase employment, namely agriculture, mining, manufacturing sectors, have come under strain.
Yeah.
And furthermore, the committee would work towards mitigating those factors that serve as impediments to these sectors.
Okay.
Chair.
Okay, Hermans?
Yeah, I think I can support that if we are saying that we mitigate, that we work towards mitigating the factors within our mandate as trade, industry, and competition.
Oh, okay.
Fair enough, Chair.
Chairperson.
Chair, Ms. Mantashe.
Okay.
Chair.
All right. Can I check if
Ms. Mantashe, Chair.
Mantashe?
Chair, in this amendment, Chairperson, I would not agree with us with the notion that in the first bullet point, labor laws which act as inhibitors to employment should be reviewed. I don't think there's any labor law that needs a review at this point.
Chair, if I may speak, Chair.
Andre?
Chair, we advised the Mr. Thring that matter that he raised there falls outside the scope of this committee, and obviously the committee, it should not form part of our engagements. Mr. Thring can comment on that.
Okay, Mr.
Chair, I've agreed, Chair. I've agreed that that not be included. So perhaps Honourable Mantashe is looking at the original draft that I sent. So I'm agreeing with what the committee, what the Secretariat as the amendment, but I've also asked that we put in the mitigating factors, which Honourable Hermans has agreed to.
Okay. There's a text written in red. Can we actually have a look at that and see if maybe we comfortable with that expression? Because in terms of Thring, can I check with you first? Is that in the amendment which we have in red and maroon, you comfortable with what is expressed? And then we can check with the other members of the committee if they are comfortable, because it is expressed that labor laws fall outside our scope, but in terms of the issues raised which impact on employment, an issue relating to the strain to the economy, it's what we're citing. Can I just check Thring is happy with that? Can I check if the other committee members are comfortable to proceed in the suggested reflection?
Chairperson?
Yes, Kabet?
Chair, just maybe a little bit of a English revision there. Wouldn't it be better to say that concerned that labor-intensive sectors as opposed to ones that are able to increase employment? I think that would just sound better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chair, we will make
labor-intensive is fine, Chair.
Yeah.
Okay. So can I just say, as a principle, we actually have consensus, but I'm sure in terms of English grammar, we actually might have a bit of a challenge. But in terms of the context of issues raised, I think we're not in disagreement. We actually say, would have Mr. Thring, the amendment as you agreed to it, to be actually put on the, is it concluding remarks?
Yeah, Chair.
Yeah, okay. So I think there's agreement. And
we can go down, Margot.
Okay.
Then, Chair, before Margot goes to the recommendations, there's another bullet point.
Yeah.
That the committee needs to discuss, and I think Margot and Sekwanda can come in there. In bullet point 3, investigation be launched into the EDD to determine the reasons for the over expenditure of 78% for the period ending 31st December 2019. Chair, we had a discussion as a secretariat around the matter. I think maybe Margot or Sekwanda can just maybe give some information on that before the committee deliberates on the matter.
Well, it's got a suggested text on that. Can we actually then scroll down so that we can see that part?
No, we can see it, Chair.
We can see that. Wonderful. Okay. All right. Can we then actually invite Mark? You said there's someone who would like to make a presentation on that. Andre?
Chair, yes, Margot and Sekwanda can comment, Chair, and then we can also ask the DTI to comment, Chair.
Okay. Secretariat?
So, Chair, unfortunately, my camera is not working at the moment. So in the report, the EDD had given reasons for this over expenditure already. So unless the committee is of the view that that explanation is insufficient, there may not be a need to ask for an investigation.
Okay. All right. Let's actually then get, is there any further comments on that? Do you say the point on our part will be, because the issue has been raised sufficiently and properly, we don't actually have reason to raise it again because it's a duplication.
Chair? Chair,
Yes.
if I may comment, Chair?
Yeah. Andre?
It's Mr. Thring and Ms. Hermans, Chair.
Thring and Hermans?
Chair, I only saw, I think, 2 comments in the report that was made by the EDD. One indicated that this was not necessarily a line-by-line matter, and the second was that much of the over-expenditure, I think, and I was trying to find it, but I'll find it shortly, but much of the over-expenditure, I think, was because of transfers. And I don't know whether that adequately explains, but it is possible because I think I missed that particular committee meeting. I had other business to attend to, party business to attend to on the day. But it is possible that there was a further explanation, but the report certainly doesn't give further clarity as to why there was an over expenditure of 78%.
Okay.
Chair?
Yes, Hermans?
Chair, I think it would be useful if Margot or Sekwanda can speak to that and refer us without going out of this document to the report. Because for me, when I read it in the main report, the reason for the over expenditure, it was fully explained. And I really don't think I can agree to there being an investigation launched. Because they have reported to the committee on this matter.
Chair, okay. Sekwanda would like to speak, Chair.
Okay, Sekwanda. Sekwanda on the floor. Can we find Sekwanda?
Good afternoon, members. In terms of, I want to add to Margot's explanation. On page 22 of the report, the second paragraph, Margot, can we go to that? Oh,
she's not in the report. Yes, but
it is now on the screen. No. I think it gives an explanation why there is over expenditure. I think that paragraph does explain it. given that there is an explanation already, going back to Margot's point, if members are then not happy with that explanation, then that conclusion can be explored. Thank you, Chair.
All right. I think, Honorable Tring, you did actually indicate to say you might have missed the detail. So I think with the reflection of the rationale of the over-expenditure, investigation may not be necessary. The information provided would be sufficient. Unless you say differently, Tring, can I actually ask you to...
Chair, I'm looking at page... Okay. Sorry, are you done, Chair?
Yeah, because I'm looking at that bullet point of rationale of over-expenditure. Can you see that?
I'm looking at page 22 of the report, unless I'm looking at this is the most recent report that was sent to me by Andre. And page 22, the second paragraph, does not speak to the rationale for the over-expenditure. So like I said, unless I'm looking at a different report. The only thing in the report that I looked at was on page 7, and there's just 2 lines with regards to the over-expenditure. And it's got rationale for over-expenditure, and that is page 7 of the report. And it basically just says, the EDD informed the committee that it had spent 78% due to transfers, which were not on a straight line basis, and that there had also been additional unplanned expenditure relating to the forensic investigation of one of the entities, which it had to carry out as instructed by National Treasury. So just two lines, Chair, with regards to over-expenditure.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because I would like us to confirm if we are looking at the same document. Can I just check with the Secretariat if that page of rationale of over-expenditure is in the latest report, and does Mr. Tring have the same reflection, because we should be looking at the same detail. And
Margot, our Chair would like Margot to come in. Margot Sukwanda, Chair.
Yeah.
So, Chairperson, the document has been updated. So it now reads as on the screen.
Can I just check Tring if Mr. Tring has got that detail? Mr. Tring, do you have actually reflection of where we're looking at?
I'm not able to, unfortunately, Chair. It's only when members begin to speak that I can actually see, but all of the projections and the presentations I'm not able to see. I don't know what happened. I was able to see them, but from the last the last meeting, I'm just not able to see it. I don't know if it's an IT thing.
Chair? Yes, sorry. I just wanted to check, because Mr. Tring should be able to actually look at the same detail we are reflecting on, which actually I thought the Secretariat was trying to clarify. So we wanted to help Ms. Hammers, because if ever he's not looking at the same detail, it might actually be a complicated discussion, because we are actually saying with the explanation of the rationale of over-expenditure, there should be actually sufficient details shared to be able to understand what it means. So need for investigation may not be necessary. Can I just get if ever there's any comments from the Secretariat?
Chair, just suffice to read the additional information for Honourable Tring. So in terms of that last sentence, it's been expanded on. So it now reads, there had also been additional unplanned expenditure relating to the forensic investigation for the Competition Commission regarding relatively high levels of irregular expenditure related to the use of professional consultants. The forensic investigation had been requested by the National Treasury.
Okay. So can I just check then, Mr. Tring, if ever you've got that detail, but if ever you don't have the right documents, can I ask that maybe through the Secretariat, we have a look at that, Mr. Tring, because unless you're looking at something different, we won't be able to conclude on the matter. But from what being read out, are you comfortable with that, Mr. Tring?
Look, Chair, I think that it's going to be for the committee to decide, but I think my position is going to stand in the light of what I actually have in front of me. So the committee then needs to decide whether to include or whether to exclude that particular point.
So I think the committee will actually then agree on the conclusion in terms of the statement we have in our report as agreed to by the committee, because it does actually map out processes, and National Treasury is actually at the center of management of that part. So I think that's the understanding, unless it's actually different, but I'm sorry that maybe you may not be looking at the same thing, but what was read out, I hope that you're actually comfortable with that conclusion. Mr. Tring?
Yeah, I would appreciate,
Chair,
if that
Chair, Ms.
is
Hermans wants to address the committee.
Okay, Hermans?
Chair, I would not support the Honourable Tring's inputs on that matter, what he's suggesting. Because if you go to the main document, it speaks to the fact that the committee did inquire about the investigation into the over expenditure, and there has been a response. So I don't think it would be good for us to then repeat that request, to which there was a response in the recommendations or in the conclusion.
Yeah, so I think let's actually agree, Mr. Tring, you actually have just said, if the committee is comfortable, we can proceed. But on my part, I think I'll have to make sure that at least where we concluded in terms of what was actually presented as a part of the report, we're actually in agreement with that. Okay. Can we then actually agree, Mr. Tring, that we will, with those adjustments, which we actually have, unfortunately you can't see, which were read out, the committee is comfortable that we can proceed in that way?
Chair?
Yes.
Can we proceed now to the recommendations made by Mr. Tring, the ACDP? As you see, the first recommendation, and I think Mr. Tring mentioned it in his opening remark, that we are advising the committee that this doesn't form part of the scope of the report, and it's more suitable for, it shouldn't be part of this report. That's what we are, and it's on the screen, Chair.
Okay, let's actually get Mr. Tring with the comment in terms of actually the allocation of the issue.
Chair, I can indicate at the outset that even though I'm not happy with the recommendation, but I understand that if it's out of the scope of the committee, we'll look at picking it up at another level. Thank you.
Okay. Can we then proceed? I'm sure that one is agreed to. Mr. Tring says it's in order. It's okay to proceed in that way. Can we take the next item?
The next item, Chair, we have just reworded it. It's just for Mr. Tring to indicate if he's happy with the way we captured it, and for the committee to give an opinion on the matter.
Mr. Tring?
I'm happy with the. I'm happy with that rewording, Chair.
Okay. Can we check with committee members?
Chair.
Herman? Yes.
Ms. Hermans?
Can the content advisors just remind us? I know the beneficiation issue was discussed in the report quite extensively.
Yeah.
So do we need this recommendation? Is there anything in this recommendation that's not covered in the report?
Okay.
I will ask Margot and Sekwanda to come in, Chair.
Okay, Margot and Sekwanda. Margot, Sekwanda. It's on the widening of the scope of beneficiation. To leave it
Margot?
Okay.
I don't know if Margot is not hearing us, or it's Sekwanda, Chair.
Okay. All right.
Chair,
yes.
The matter is extensively discussed in the...
Hi, Andre.
Hi, Sekwanda.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you,
Yes.
Sekwanda.
Sorry, I'm losing you there. Margot, can you scroll up and see the reworded version of this?
Of the
If you can hear me.
section?
Beneficiation, Seconda? The beneficiation, Seconda, we're talking about.
I don't see anything wrong with it being in the conclusions, as long as even though it is in the body of the report.
Okay.
Even though it's been discussed extensively in the body of the report.
Okay. 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 So you say that the conclusion is not a big issue.
No.
In terms of, okay. Okay. So can I just check with the honourable member if ever there's any further comments, but the inclusion at the conclusion looks like it actually won't affect any of the previous engagement. So I'm sure, Hermans, you're actually raising a point.
Yes.
Earlier on that I think the consensus will be that it may not actually. Yes, Hermans?
Yes, yes, that we move it to as a concluding remark, because it then only like lifts and emphasizes, puts another emphasis on the issue of beneficiation. We can support that.
Okay, good. All right, can we then proceed to the next one? Okay.
Chair, the third input that is made as a recommendation, we of the view, we reworded it, but we also of the view that it's rather best placed under the conclusions, Chairperson. But we have to speak to Mr. Frink if he views that, and the committee has to also decide if that approach is correct.
Can I take Mr. Frink? I'm not sure.
Chair, I have no problem if it's moved to concluding remarks, Chair. I don't have a challenge with that.
Agreement that we can move as suggested to concluding remark. Can I actually check with the other committee members if ever there's any comment on this specific issue? If there's none, then we actually take it to concluding remarks as amended.
Oh. Chair?
Yes.
We have then concluded the input from the ACDP. Now I'll ask Margot to put the input from the African National Congress on for the committee to consider.
Okay. Can we take the next one, the ANC?
Chair, sorry,
yes.
can I ask if, because I'm not able to see on my screen, if whether that has also been emailed to me as well?
That's correct. It was emailed.
Yeah. So, Honorable Tring, there was actually an email with the different documents, including the agenda and inputs of parties. Please check on that. Was sent, I think, sent through Andre's email.
Yeah, correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Because it just shows my inputs, Chair, and it doesn't show the inputs from the other parties, the recommendations and changes. That's the email that I've received from Andre.
Chair, there was an email prior to that, Mr. Frink. I can resend it to you. Just check your email prior to that, because yours was last. So hence you would. So I would suggest you just double.
Okay.
You see.
All right. Now found it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Chair,
can we then proceed on that? Yeah.
Chair. I think the first concluding remark is on the screen that was submitted by the African National Congress. We need just to indicate what committee needs to indicate their view on that matter, and we proceed accordingly, Chair.
Okay. So that's the first one. To check if ever there's, from the Secretariat side, it does look at that concluding remarks fits on that space.
Chair, may I propose, Chair?
Yeah.
Seeing that this is, we didn't make any changes to it because we felt it was fine. Seeing that it's the ANC, if the other parties can comment if they are happy or in disagreement with that, Chair, because then we can go quicker, because this is the ANC position, so we don't need to hear from the African National Congress on their own submission, unless we are proposing a change.
Let's actually have the first one. There's one. It comments from honourable members, other parties specifically.
Agreed, Chair. We're concerned about the contraction as well.
Okay. Agreed. The first point, can we say the first one, we can actually pass and look at the second one, unless there are other comments from other parties in terms of the issues relating to deepen rural developments and township. Are there any comments from parties on the ANC second item?
No.
If not,
No.
Can we take the third item? Challenges facing steel mining industry. And then if ever there actually no comments, or then we
Chair,
can
I'd like to comment, Cuthbert.
Cuthbert.
Chair, Ms. Cuthbert.
Number 3.
Cuthbert. Just to confirm, Chair, that in point 3, that is also a scheduling concern, it seems to.
Yeah.
So I think that one could actually, be dealt with as the committee, rather than it being put in as a concluding remark per se, as per what was the direction of mine.
Okay. On the third one, there's actually the comment that the scheduling will be more fitting than actually the concluding remark. Is the African National Congress or the ANC comfortable with that? Can we take comments? Yes.
Okay, let's take somebody else.
Chairperson, we would plead with Honorable Tring and the rest of the other members of the opposition to agree with us to leave that item as it is. Thank you, Chair.
So it's because there was suggestion.
Chair, please note, I didn't have a problem. I think it was Cuthbert.
Yeah, it was
Cuthbert. Yeah, it was Cuthbert, yes.
Cuthbert.
I'm sorry.
Mantasha, you were speaking to Cuthbert. So Cuthbert,
I'm sorry, Chairperson.
Yeah, it was Cuthbert, yeah. Cuthbert?
Thank you, Chair. And just to Ms. Mantash, all white people don't look the same, I assure you. And Mr. Tring and I are a little bit different in that respect. Both South Africans, though, nonetheless. Anyway, Chair, I disagree with Ms. Mantash, and I think for the same reasoning that the committee secretariat provided reasoning for me to compromise on my recommendation, I think the same should be of this particular recommendation.
Okay.
Chair, if I may, Chair.
Andre?
That the last part of that number 3, Chair, we can delete as proposed. That's a proposal I'm making, that we delete the last part. It's a scheduling issue, which is correct. But the first part could be retained.
Okay.
So
agreed.
I agree, Chair.
Okay. No, that's fine. So there's a point of the first part being included. So I think, Cuthbert, you're comfortable with that? And
yes, Chair, I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
Okay. And the ANC, you're fine with the amendment?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, we are, Chair.
Can we take number 4? Number 4, and I'll just ask other parties on that concluding remark. Number 4, if you're comfortable, please indicate, but if ever there are suggested changes, can you actually speak to that? We're happy that it's there, it's fine. Can we proceed?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed too. Can we take number 5? Welcome the socio-economic policy framework for township rural economies to be finalized in next financial year. Parties, any comments?
Not from the ACDP.
Yes, Chair, please.
Mr. Cuthbert?
Chair, with regards to recommendation 6, I agree with this particular recommendation, Chair. But I would suggest that
it's a conclusion. It's a conclusion.
Oh, sorry, concluding remark. My apologies, Andre. I agree with this, but I think that we should put an example in, and I think the most stark example of this is China, that has I think a 3% difference with us in terms of a trade imbalance. So just to be 100% correct, I think that should be added in.
Okay. So you say number 6. So I assume number 5 was agreed. So fine. Number 6, it's actually that specific example, which you're actually suggesting, particularly with China.
Chair.
Yes.
Can I ask why? can I ask why we are then particularly mentioning China? Because in the body of the document, quite a few countries within BRICS, the trade deficit is unpacked in the document.
Okay, so you say it should be broader, not specific to China.
Yes,
And
because all the other countries are mentioned in the body of the document.
Okay, okay. So
in terms of trade deficit.
Okay. Not mentioning the example of China or mentioning
okay.
the list.
Yeah, no, she's mentioning all of them, so it's fine.
Okay.
That's
it's
fine.
just giving the broader examples with China, Russia, India, and Brazil, because I think it's context of BRICS.
Yes.
So those, okay.
And can we add the to BRIC?
You couldn't hear?
You're breaking, Hermans. You're breaking a bit.
Chairperson.
Ms. Mantas, Chair.
Okay.
Chair.
Mantas, I can hear you.
I am wondering why we're mentioning these countries again, because the abbreviation BRICS represents them all. Why?
Oh, can I just say?
Be added. It's BRICS, not BRIC. Africa is part of BRICS.
Okay. Can I just say, with the last edition, there may be actually a sense that on the first sentence, that would actually say the statement following referred to the scope of BRICS as actually reflected. So maybe it's a point of actually removing the latter part. It's re-emphasis if you actually add it like what is being suggested. I'm not too sure if ever the members then will say, let's proceed in that way with the fixing of BRICS.
That's fine, Chair.
Okay. Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
All right. Can we then say those were the 6 points on the...
Chair?
Yes.
Margot wants to say something, Chair?
Margot?
Can I make a suggestion? Because obviously South Africa is not going to trade with itself.
Oh, yes.
Should we specifically mention the countries where there was a narrowing of the trade deficit? Because one of them, I think Brazil, there wasn't. I just mentioned the 3 countries instead of saying narrowing of the trade deficit with the BRIC countries.
Okay. So you want to be specific to that, because there are some which are excluded in that situation.
Yes, Chair.
Okay. Can I actually then, all right. That will be China, India, and Russia.
Agreed, Chair.
Okay.
Agreed, Chair.
All right. Okay. So then can we then proceed? I'm not sure.
Chair, with the recommendation?
Yeah, look at the recommendation. There's a first one.
Margot, is there anything else, Margot? Chair, the ANC submitted this a recommendation. Are we of the opinion, if Margot, I can't see it on the screen, that this recommendation is more concluding remark than a recommendation, Chair, but it's for the ANC to comment on our
Okay. So can I just check the African National Congress, the concluding remark which we had as a suggested recommendation? Can we be able to then actually agree to move it to concluding remarks?
Chair.
Honorable
Ms.
Hermans?
Chair, we don't have a problem as long as we have captured the seamless process of the amalgamation of the 2 departments. So we don't have a objection to it being moved to concluding remarks.
Okay. As suggested by Secretariat, there's the agreement that we can move it to closing remarks. Agreed to. Can we then proceed to the next one, unless maybe this the last item. What's the next item on the concluding? Margot? Are we at the end of the presentation?
Sorry, I got cut. Can you see the presentation still?
We can see it, Margot, but we're not moving down.
Yeah. Because we're at the the recommendation. Number 1 is agreed to, and then
Chair,
number 2.
Number 2, it was already in the second quarter report, Chair, so it should not form part of this report.
Okay, so which means there's actually a suggestion that 2 be removed. Yeah. Because it's actually duplicating. Can we ask the ANC?
Chair?
Yes, Hammond.
Given the state of these 2 industries, the sugar industry and the steel and metal fabrication sectors, if there's nothing in the concluding remarks about it, can't we move it to the concluding remarks?
We will check with the secretary if that makes sense. Yes, in the report.
Chair?
Yes, Andre?
Nothing stops the committee to indicate to us that we must move it. If that's the view of the committee, Chair, we will move it to the concluding remarks, Chair, again.
Okay, so not to be a recommendation, I think it's agreed to, that we move it to a concluding remarks. Yeah. Can we check if committee members, you comfortable with that? Maybe the ANC is supporting that in agreement?
We are in agreement.
We agree, Chair.
Yeah, yes, we agree, Chair.
Okay.
Chair, the third point.
Okay, number 3.
Chair, we were of the view that the third point, that the matter being raised there's no reference in the report to that matter. And I think it will be more suitable for our entities report because it's discussed extensively. So we are of the view that it should not be form part of the recommendations, Chair.
We have the suggestion that in item 3 should be removed. I'm sure we can get the African National Congress to respond to that because Secretariat advised that we should actually remove.
We will take the advice. We will take the advice.
Chairperson
Montashe?
Chair, I was saying we will take the advice from the Secretariat.
Okay. Is agreed to number
Agreed.
4?
Agreed, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. On number 4.
Chair, the ANC made a proposal. We just rewrote it, and we want to check if the ANC is happy the way we put it there, Chairperson.
Okay. There is actually a suggested expression. As it reflected there, I'm sure the members can see that. Can we check with the ANC if ever there's agreement on that amendment? It's actually same detail, more clearer in terms of what.
Yes, we agree, Chair.
Okay, so that amendment, the amendment is agreed to. Can we then move on to the next one?
She's moved a bit too far.
Yeah, just move it down.
Okay, there.
Okay.
Chair,
the next
with
one,
respect,
yes.
with respect to this,
I think you must go up, isn't it?
But it's in the thing in there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually.
Chair,
yes.
With respect to this recommendation, we also have the view that it should not be included. It's more suitable for the Gauteng oversight report where we extensively discuss SABS and NRCS, and we will have the Gauteng report soon before the committee. So it will be better located in that report, Chair.
Okay, so there is a proposal that the issue is accommodated or covered on the report cited of oversight. So we need to actually agree, maybe asking the ANC that we remove it from this part of the report. Can we ask the ANC?
We agree, Chairperson.
Okay, so we will remove, okay. The ANC agrees, Secretary, that we
We will do that, Chair.
Remove that, yes. Can we take
Chair,
the next?
The next one, Chair. We also just reworded it, Chair, and we wanted the approval of the committee, especially the ANC, because it was their present input.
Then there's actually a suggested rewording. It's not changing of content. Developing targeted incentive for companies operating in the industrial parks. So there's suggestion that we agree to amend or
Yes,
agreed, Chairperson.
Agreed. Okay.
We agree.
Thank you very much. There's actually the next one, which is Economic Development Department, because we just finished the previous one. Can we take the next lot?
Chair,
yes.
We also have the view that this recommendation should be moved to the conclusions, Chair, as we captured it there, Chair. But that's for a decision for the committee and the ANC.
Can we check with the ANC, moving it to concluding remarks instead of? Are you happy with that? There's a proposed change.
Chair, can we just hear what is the motivation for moving this to conclusions? What is the problem with it being in the recommendations, given the state of the steel industry?
Recommendation. Let's take Secretariat, if you can speak to that.
Chair, maybe we'll ask Margot to come in quickly, Chair, then I'll come in.
Margot.
Chair, if you look at the body of the report, I'm not sure which page at the moment. It indicates that the amendments have been made. So we'd be welcoming the amendments and not asking for them to be done.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So already
Chair.
Yeah. That was the rationale, Chair, that we've put for it to be moved to the concluding remark, Chair.
Okay. Okay. Can I just check with the ANC?
With that explanation, I agree, Chair, that we move it to concluding remarks.
Okay. It's agreed to the suggestion of the Secretariat. Can we take the next point, number 2?
Chair, we have the same view regarding this, Chair, that it's also a concluding remark rather than a recommendation.
Okay. So there's actually the same suggestion. Move it to concluding remarks than recommendation.
We agree, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Matashe. I'm sure then we have the ANC agreed to. Can we take the third point?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Then number 3, there's a rewording part.
Margot?
But we agreed to the rewording.
You're happy with the rewording?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Then can we actually move to number 4? Rewording is agreed to in number 3. Number 4, there's actually rewording as well. The African ANC?
It's just a rewording, Chair, and the ANCs must give their position on the rewording, Chair.
Okay. Number 4, ANC. There's rewording because it's not content.
We agree to the rewording, Chair.
Okay.
I wanted to say, Comrade Chair.
Oh, well, it's still okay. You can say that.
Chairperson?
Chair, there is.
Yes,
Chair.
Chair, does this particular recommendation not speak to an earlier concluding remark as well regarding the social economic policy framework? Are we not then just duplicating, comments and feelings around this particular issue?
Okay. So is it under the DTI? We actually have the same thing, or then you'll say it's a duplication?
Yes, it's very similar in nature, Chair.
Is it? Okay.
Chair, in the concluding remarks, we speak about it being concluded in the next financial year. But in the recommendations, we are actually speaking about the intergovernmental support to get it done. I don't know, where is it now?
Yeah. No, can I just say from what Honorable Cuthbert is raising, can we check
further down?
So that we ensure that we don't actually duplicate. Yeah. Because I think from what you're actually suggesting, we may be actually saying the same thing twice. Okay, can we then pick up on the next item? So, Honorable Cuthbert, I think the suggestion is just to check that we don't duplicate.
But we are checking there. You see, it speaks about for us to finalize it in the next financial year.
Okay, okay.
The recommendation speaks to something.
Something, yes,
about the coordination. About the coordination.
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. So I'm sure, Honorable Cuthbert, I'm sure you are able to see the different expression. It's not duplicating or contradicting at this stage. Yeah. Can we then proceed, honorable members? Take the next item. Number 5, I think we just spoken. Yes.
That is just a rewording, Chair, and it's for the committee and the ANC to indicate if they're okay with the rewording as we put it there.
Can I just check with the ANC with the rewording? Comfortable with that? And then maybe for other committee members, if ever there's any comment. ANC?
ANC agrees to the rewording. It captures what we intended.
Agreed to. Number 5, it's agreed to. Can we proceed? The rewording is accepted. Let's take number 6. The next one.
Is that the Margot?
Or was that the final one?
That's the final one, Chair.
Okay, okay. Yeah, okay. So can we then actually go back, because on the agenda, which we adopted earlier, we were looking at this part of the program to be able to actually see the concluding remarks to our report and recommendations. So I think obviously we have actually got to the end of our discussion. So maybe process-wise, Secretariat, if we can be able to actually then speak to us on the basis of how we then proceed. Andre?
Chair, if I may. Chair, what will happen now, we will affect those changes proposed by the committee, and we have scheduled, I think if you look at the program, we have scheduled the formal adoption of that. Because I don't think we have the final report in front of us. We will make those necessary changes as proposed by the members. Once we have done that, we will forward it to members. And then at the meeting that we will schedule later on the program, we will formally move that report to be adopted, Chair. Because the members don't have the final report in front of them, I suggest that we do not move formal adoption, rather wait till we have the completed report, and at the next meeting when it's scheduled, adopt the report as proposed by members.
I'm sure members are comfortable with that.
Agreed, Chair.
Okay. Then it will actually conclude the item we're engaging on the third quarter report. Unless there are further issues you wanted to raise, Secretariat, I'm sure we can be able to conclude that item on the agenda. Yes, and be able to pick up on the next item of the adopted agenda earlier.
The program, Chair.
Okay. Can we then have the program? I'm sure members are comfortable with this one. Let's have our program on the screen. Remember that in the previous meeting, we tried to look at areas of the program. Some of them might be highlighting on the discussion. So I think, can I ask Secretary just to take us through from today's meeting? We are on the 6th of May.
Yes, Chair. Yeah. Chair, I think at the last meeting on Friday, we've agreed that we will do regular COVID engagements with the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition. And the program would reflect that regular engagement that we have scheduled also. Chair, what I would like to bring to members' attention, because of the lockdown that we're experiencing, although we may see a particular time on the program, we may not be allocated that particular time on that particular day, but another time. So members must just be aware of management is trying to schedule all meetings for all committees using a particular format. So although we agree with the program and the time here, it may not be the time that management management give us a different time. So we have to be cognizant of that. Chair, we have on the program, there is the COVID response, that's a 2-weekly thing. And there's also all engagements with the different entities in relation to the COVID response itself. We also scheduled, Chair, the scheduling of the adoption of this committee report is for the 12th, Chair. And then we also have scheduled the report, the other reports, I think later in June, Chair. Chair, I think there's members who would like to comment or request. Mr. McPherson would like to comment on the report, Chair. And we have to look at, obviously, at what was proposed by the Democratic Alliance this morning and see where we can fit in that engagement, Chair.
Okay, so can I just say, maybe having gone through, if you can run through the whole program.
Yeah.
You have motivated well on where you actually spoke. Let's actually look at it till the end, and then we can come back and members can actually comment and advise. If you can proceed, Andre.
Chair, I think, yeah, the program goes up till the 9th of June when we consider minutes and the third quarter program. Hopefully by then we have a projection of where our parliament will operate within the lockdown period. We don't know at this time whether it's level 4 still at the time of June. So, but it takes cognizance of the oversight of the committee in relation to the entities where the regulation was announced on behalf by the minister. So, and obviously we're dealing with reports that we must conclude as part of our obligations, Chair. Okay.
So I think the balance of COVID-19 and departmental work, it's actually what reflects on the program. Can I actually then invite committee members?
Mr. McPherson?
Yes.
Mr. McPherson, Mr. Cudworth, Chair.
McPherson.
And Mr. Cudworth thus far.
Okay. McPherson.
Thank you. I just want to understand why or where this need to have these joint meetings with the Select Committee on nearly every issue comes from. Well, one, it is extremely cumbersome to have so many members dealing with these issues. I think that, you know, that their briefing should be separate from the work that we are doing. And, you know, it just becomes extremely limiting on time to ask questions, as we found the last time. So I just want to understand what the rationale is behind this inclusion of the Select Committee in our program. I also don't see any further engagements with the Minister in the program. I would like to know why that is, because I think that, and I echo the sentiment of the chairperson in the last meeting, that, you know, we should certainly be having more of the Minister in our program, but that does not seem to have taken root in the schedule going forward. I would also then thirdly like to ask Andre, when is the APP coming to the committee, or is that being delayed for later, or maybe I might have missed it? Did I miss it?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I do apologize. You did fly through it. All right, well then I've answered one of the three questions. So just to recap, why is the Select Committee being involved in all of our committee meetings? And two, why is the Minister not coming to further meetings of the committee?
Okay, okay. Let's take the other one, Cuthbert.
Thanks very much, Chair. As per our discussion in the previous agenda point, can I please ask the Secretariat to look at a possible time regarding the steel master plan as well as the Minister's briefing on the steel industry?
Okay. Can I just check if there are any further comments?
Ms. Mantash, Chair, and Mr. Mulder.
Mantash.
3 as
and
well.
Mr.
I
Thrink.
sent
And Mr. Thrink, yeah, I saw now, Mr. Thrink.
Okay, Mantashe, Mulder, and Thrink.
And Hermans.
And Mr.
Hermans. Okay.
Chairperson, I stand to be corrected. When we started the virtual meetings, we were informed that we would have combined meetings with the standing committees of the NCOP to cut down on costs. I stand to be corrected if that's not the case, if I understand it wrongly. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Mulder?
Thank you, Chair. I want to support Member McPherson's question on why the joint meetings are being held. I'll also prefer the DTI committee to meet on its own with certain issues. And then I don't want to ask why the minister is not addressing us that often. I would urge the committee to consider that the minister should be able to speak to us more often. I think with this department specifically, it's compulsory. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Thrink?
Thank you, Chair. I agree with the previous comments that were made, but mine is more of a general one, and that is, as members of Parliament, are we not able to receive information beforehand with regards to when we are going to possibly be returning to Parliament, whether this year or next year? What we are seeing is, just based on this particular program, that now we are certainly not due back until after the 9th of June. So this is, again, Chair, just a more general comment that we are having to pick up, and I speak for the ACGP, we are having to pick up from programs that, scheduling for us to come back to Cape Town is going to possibly be only after the 9th of June, if at all.
Okay. Can I actually ask Hermans?
Chair? Yeah. Chair, I would have thought that there was some level of agreement at the level of the chief whips of the various parties about the joint briefings. But we have been told that if it's not possible, because NCOP members serve on numerous committees, that we can arrange separate briefings. But I think if it has been agreed on at a multi-party level, then we should allow it to proceed. I also want to propose, Chair, that when we schedule in a briefing on the steel industry, that we also include sugar, because it was something that was, the sugar industry, it was something that was on our program. Then, Chair, we have briefings, joint briefings on COVID-19 measures as it pertains to the DTI. I think that we must not assume that it means the minister will not be there. I think for all those briefings, we must request the minister to be the one, or one of the deputy ministers to be the ones who are briefing the portfolio committee on COVID-19 related matters. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair?
Yes, Andre?
Chair, if I may respond to the questions that the members have raised, particularly, I think Member Mantashe and Ms. Hermans already addressed the issue of the joint meetings. We received instructions that as far as possible with any COVID-related matter and with the strat plan, that we should try to have a joint committee to cover costs. That was agreed to at a multi-party level, hence that. But there will be cases where it may not be possible for the select committee to be with us because they do have a bigger portfolio than our committee. So we may not have them all the time, but we were advised that we should include them when we do schedule our program. And I do understand the frustration of members in terms of time for them to engage. With regard to the joint briefings on a Monday, we have consulted with the Office of the Ministers and the DTI, and the Monday meetings is basically where, hopefully, when the Minister is available, for the Minister and Deputy Minister to be present on those days. So the Minister, maybe it's not on the program, but the Minister, the 11th, every second Monday meeting would be engaging with the Minister. So the Minister we are inviting the Minister to come, but we do not know if that's always possible. But the intention was, it's those meetings where the Minister will brief the committee and give updates on those matters. With regard to, I think I've addressed most of the issues, Chair. And obviously, with regard to the scheduling of the steel and sugar and something, we will have to look at the program. And we will have to find a day for that engagement, but we will also do that in consultation with the Office of the Minister and also the department to see if those master plans are finalized or final. I know one is final sugar, but the others, if it's finalized yet, and then we will schedule accordingly, Chair. With regard to Mr. Thring's question, I'm not in a position to answer that question. I think the NCCC will be able to provide us with clarity in terms of when Parliament will reopen, and the Speaker and the Chairperson of the Council of Provinces would guide us in that process. But Chair, I hope I answered all the questions with regard to what that was raised by members.
Yeah. I have a question.
Mr. McPherson? Chair?
Can I just do this before McPherson? Is that there is confirmation that meetings of committees' time
3 hours, yeah,
will be 3 hours.
Yeah.
Instead of actually the ones we actually had before. You can see even on our program here, although the other issue which might be a bit of a challenge is when, in terms of slots, can those meetings be convened? But there is actually a general principle agreed to that at least meetings should be 3 hours in terms of time. So in trying to actually get more time, McPherson wanted to raise point, but to raise a point, let's hear you so that we can actually conclude on the program.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that the Minister is going to come. That's excellent. And you'll recall I wrote a letter to you asking if we can include in the agenda the issue of understanding the rationale behind e-commerce. So would that be possible to include that then in the meeting for the 11th, if the Minister is going to be here? Because I wouldn't want to spring it up on him, but just to give him an advance notice to discuss that issue.
Can I just say, in terms of the last meeting, I'm sure that issue was raised. I think I'm not wrong to say that, McPherson.
Raised, but
that
never
in the meeting, yeah, in the meeting we had with the Minister, that issue was raised. We didn't have enough time to discuss. Before we actually have a process where outside the committee we actually try and schedule issues, it may be helpful on issues like what you have raised, because there were quite a number of issues which we highlighted on that meeting. And I'm sure there will be time or more time that we will be able to have with the Minister to further engage. In terms of the program before us, we will have sufficient time. And I think meeting as the committee, we should actually be able to use that space with a bit of time that is being extended to be able to have proper discussion around issues which are important and critical. So at this stage, before I actually end up with a short list of things that we must get the Minister to do or deal with, so can we say our meetings will be regular enough, interaction with the Minister will and should be sufficient, and on the basis of that, let's not actually have the agenda worked out in advance, but when we get to those meetings, be able to engage, use the time we have more fruitfully. So at this time, can we not actually try and tie up the agendas? But the interaction, I think, will be sufficient. We will actually try and use time more productively. So can we adopt the program on the basis of that, honorable members? we're not too sure what will be happening over the period we're reflecting here, that we will be back to Parliament or not. But can we plan on the basis of working virtually as a committee, as we have started recently? And the adoption of this program should actually accommodate that. There might be changes, we don't know, but at this stage, we are able to actually use time allocated to actually implement and have oversight as the portfolio committee to the work that we should be doing. So can we try and conclude then, honorable members? Because in terms of the program, as presented, I'm sure you're comfortable that we proceed. There may be detail that we clear closer to engaging in those meetings, and I'm sure we will improve moving forward. Can I just maybe try and conclude? Are there any?
Chair.
Yeah. Andre?
Chair, can we have a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the program before we conclude, Chair?
I hear a member from Cuthbert and Anne Hermans, Judy Hermans. Mutaung. Can I take those three hands?
Thank you, Chair.
Cuthbert, yeah.
Chair, I disagree with you slightly on your pronouncement that we shouldn't try and pack agendas. The meetings that I'm referring to, particularly the steel industry and the ones alluded to by the ANC, being the sugar industry, are ones that were scheduled as meetings but needed to be postponed because we weren't in Cape Town. So I think we should keep the same intention that we had with those meetings and schedule them as meetings where the agenda is solely focused on those, as opposed to saying, well, if we find space and you can make, fruitful use of our meeting, then we do that. Those were specific reasons for us meeting, and I think we should stick to those, Chair.
Yeah, no, I think it makes complete sense. Yeah, noted. Can we take Hermans?
I defer to Honorable Motaung.
Okay, Motaung.
Thanks, Chair. I move for adoption of the program.
Okay. Can we then actually get the seconder to the adoption of the program?
Thank you, Chair.
Ms. Mwatse?
Thank you, Chair. I second the proposal.
Okay. Can we then actually agree that we move to the next item unless there are objections from honorable members? So the program is agreed to. Can we actually move to the next item on the agenda, which actually is us concluding our meeting? For Secretariat, our next meeting, Andre, if you can actually
Chair?
speak to that. Yes.
Chair, we have distributed the APPs and the strat plan to members, I think, about 2 weeks ago. We can resend it, but that will be the focus of a meeting on the 11th of May. We will hopefully, we will probably by Friday confirm the virtual meeting because we're waiting for every time for lock-in details and passwords, so we can't do it prior to that. Hopefully we will have the presentation, Chair, by Friday. I cannot speak on that if that's possible, but the DTI hopefully will have the presentation ready by Friday. As soon as I receive it, Chair, we will distribute it to members, and then we will share the meeting. The first meeting is on Monday, and on Tuesday, and on Wednesday. So we have 3 meetings scheduled for next week, Chair.
Okay. Can I just say the next meeting is 11th May, and the time is 9 to 12. And you did say that, Secretary.
Chair, just to correct you. Chair, just to correct you, the time is 3 o'clock on Monday till 6 o'clock.
Or 3 to 6.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think in those meetings, the time was an issue highlighted, that there might be changes of time of those meetings, but the dates will actually be what we have just adopted. So the next one will be, you said 12 to 3.
Yeah. No, 3 till 6, Chair. The 11th of May, 3 till 6 o'clock.
Okay.
The 12th will be at 9 o'clock, Chair. Okay. And back to 3 o'clock on Wednesday.
Chair.
All right.
Mr. McPherson, Mr. Cuthbert.
Cuthbert.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I just want to ask for one favor, Chair, and that's, can we please be sent the calendar invites a fair while in advance? I understand the login details may not necessarily be available, but just so that we can also block out our diaries, if
we
possible.
can do that, Chair. We'll do it old school, Chair. We'll do it like we normally did in advance, but the login will come later then.
Yeah, no, I'm happy that you do send the SMS as well to remind us, which is quite helpful. Thank you very much. Can we then meet next meeting, 11 May at 3? Can I thank you for participation? And the meeting is adjourned.
Long live the chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Chair.
Thank you.
Bye.
In a way that we never thought we would when we had our last sitting in Parliament on the 18th of March. But due to the invisible disease that is attacking our country, we have to meet like this. I think as members, we have to be exemplary and not to be the ones who are moving around. We have to abide by the regulations as presented by the National Command Council. These are the trying times, but I believe, as President has said so many a times when he is presenting to the nation, we shall. Members, we have an agenda which is very short, and the time is not the normal time that we usually use for our meeting. We'll only be having this meeting strictly 2 hours. If we exceed 2 hours, the system is just going to click all of us off. So we have to respect the time. I'm handing over to you, Nola, to present any apologies that we have, and after that, go through the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson. From the Portfolio Committee's side, we've got 2 apologies. One of the Honorable Matebula, whom has a bereavement, whom we know we were informed a day before yesterday. I think it was yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, that he had lost his son. So our condolences go to his family. The second apology that we have is that of Honorable Kopane, who is off ill, so she'll not be able to attend to this meeting today. Through you, Chairperson, I'd like to hand over to my colleague from the NCOP to see if there are any apologies that side. Slupega, are there any apologies from the NCOP? Okay, seemingly not. Let me, Chairperson, I think we'll probably get there much later or as and when Hlupeka comes to join back into the meeting.
No, I'm in. No, I'm in.
Are you in? Are there any apologies from the NCOP?
Yes, yes. So we do have one apology from Honorable Aple, who is in hospital.
Thank you, Chairperson. Through you, Chairperson, I'll go through the agenda of today's meeting. The Chairperson has already opened the meeting. We've just alluded to the apologies. The reason why we have this meeting today is that the Portfolio Committee and the Select Committee will jointly receive a briefing from the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure regarding COVID-19 related issues. And one of those issues is the properties that are earmarked for use as quarantine sites during the COVID-19 period. The other agenda item is the role of the EPWP beneficiaries during this period. And the third one is a burning issue that that honorable members may have heard on the headlines and the media and social media as well, which is the Bay Bridge fencing project. So the department will be giving us those three presentations today. And as I said earlier, that members will definitely be given 3 minutes to ask at a later stage. But for now, I'll hand it back to you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Nola. I will hand over to Minister Dylan. Minister? Minister? I think Minister was here earlier on, but in the event that the Minister is not responding, Deputy Minister? I think let's hand over to DJ because the Minister and the Deputy Minister apparently are not responding.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair, Honorable members and colleagues. Am I audible? Okay.
Yes, you are audible. Yeah, but we can't see you.
You can't see me?
Yes.
No, I have put on the mask because I'm not alone. It's a requirement of the COVID. But you can see the face.
Maybe
okay.
It's my iPad, but I can't see you.
No, we can see him.
Okay. No, thanks very much. Thanks very much. I really appreciate. We are going to start with our presentation. We'll start with the one on quarantine sites, and then we'll take the one on EPWP, and thereafter the one on the Bay Bridge. Mr. Mavinja is going to take us through on the quarantine. Mr. Mavinja, your time is 10 minutes. You must stick to that 10 minutes to brief the Portfolio Committee and the Select Committee. You can take over, Mr. Mavinja.
Good afternoon, the Honorable Chair, the Honorable members, the Minister, Deputy Minister of Public Works, and the members of the House. I would be very quick because I've got only 10 minutes to go through the presentation. But if you look, if we all look at the content page, we're trying to respond to all questions that which the Portfolio Committee raised to the Department of Public Works. I think we are covering the background until the last part, which is the challenges and interventions, including the progress update that we can give to the committee to date. The background, as we all know, that the Public Works has been activated by the regulations, Section 5 of the regulations of the lockdown, that the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure must identify and make available sites to be used as isolation as well as quarantine facilities as the need arises. And that responsibility has been actually extended as well to the member of the Executive Council responsible for public works in the province, as well as the accounting officers of the municipalities concerned. DPW, in terms of its responsibilities, it is represented in the public health and infection containment work stream, which is chaired by the Department of Health at the NAT joint. And then we all report in terms of that work stream to the NAT joint. And that is chaired by the presidents as well by the SecDev. NAT joint also reports to the National Coronavirus Command Center. What we also want to quickly do as kind of the background as well is to just give the key responsibilities that are based on what we do as a department, including the Department of Health. That is the identification of sites. That is all public works responsibility, whether it identifies sites from its own asset register or whether it identifies sites from other state-owned entities or private sector. As it's also submit that list of to the Department of Health for assessment, and then the assessment is then conducted by Department of Health. Approval granted based on guidelines and specifications by Department of Health. And as the department, we would actually issue.
Sorry, Honorable Chair. Can I ask that the presentation be uploaded? Thank you.
No, thank you. I was gonna ask that as well. Thank you very much.
I'm on slide 5, honorable members and chair. I've covered item number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of that particular slide, and now I was on item number 6 that talks to activation of a facility from the private sector establishment. What that means is that the Department of Health would actually dispatch necessary PPEs, which are personal protective equipment, and medical practitioners, and then SABC will actually dispatch its own security services to the site concerned. And Department of Public Works will then sign the service level agreement with the private establishment, and then we activate the site for the admission of people to the quarantine site concerned. From there, it is a question of doing the transactions in terms of the submission of invoices and making sure that those ones are processed accordingly. This is the table, the next slide, table that reflects that which I've already kind of given some bit of background on, that we identify facilities. That is on the far left, is colored in orange, and then in the middle, a section that is assessed and compliant facilities. It's got yellow kind of a color. And then the far right, which is light blue, and then it talks only to activated facilities. Those are kind of facilities where we have got a number of people that which have been already accommodated in those specific sites. This is just a breakdown in terms of the quarantine sites that which have been assessed and are regarded as compliant. That's the next slide, across the country. And we, in the next slide, slide number 9, then we are just giving the breakdown in terms of provinces. Each province, including its own district municipalities. And that goes for slide 11, slide 12, that would be Northern Cape and Northwest. And the slide 13, that talks to the Western Cape. These are the figures that keep on changing. As I present on this one, there is already information about the Eastern Cape, which seems to be having zeros on this particular presentation. But they have already indicated this today, this morning, that they've got people that have been already housed in the activated facilities. Those are Alfred Zo, Amatole Buffalo, O.R. Tambo, Chris Rani, and yeah, I think Buffalo and Chris Rani, yes. Coming to slide number 14. Slide number 14 gives the rental cost. It responds to the question around the issues of standard tariffs that which have been negotiated with these private establishments. Those ones who were involved in negotiation, it was the National Treasury and Department of Tourism. Those are kind of terms and conditions under which, on which there were kind of agreement between the two departments with the establishments concerned. That is a Festa hotel. You will be charged 850 if the sharing is 1,035. For a two-star hotel is 950. It will be 1,000 if we're sharing, and it goes up until the four-star hotel. And then the next slide, it talks now to the hotels at which we have contracted thus far as the National Department of Public Works. Those are the amounts that which we have to budget for, and the total amount which is 28,677,600 rands. Then we come to the state-owned facilities. There was also a question that was raised around the state-owned facilities. And then in here in this slide number 16, the next slide, it talks now to the two facilities that which the Department of Public Works has made it ready for activation by the Department of Health. We have had a meeting earlier on this morning, and there was also communication to the DOG, sorry, to DOH in the province, the head of the province, of the department there in the province, to say that we need these ones to be activated as a matter of urgency. We're just waiting for the response in that regard. And it took over 2 months to have these facilities refurbished and currently finished to accommodate people that will be referred to the quarantine. And IDT was not involved. There was also a question around IDT's involvement in the repairs and possible construction of the facilities. But IDT was not involved in the two facilities that which we are talking about as state-owned. Provincial Public Works have their own facilities which they avail from their own immovable asset register to serve as quarantine. For any refurbishment, the provinces follow its own procurement process and it accounts, but they all report to the NAT joint so that that report can actually filter through to the NCCC. Those are the amounts in the next slide. That is the amount of the two, the cost related to the two facilities that which we have made reference to in the previous slide, with a total amount of 5 million, that which we have spent thus far. Coming now to the issue of challenges around the privately owned facilities for intended period. The repairs and renovation of sites costly and time delay. These are not, these are the state-owned facilities, not private-owned facilities. There's a bit of background noise. I'm getting distracted. Yeah. The theft of equipment and damages to the asset, the procurement of beds is also a bit of a challenge because we must have a disposal strategy in terms of those beds as to where do we take them to after or post COVID-19, and the provision of catering services and also ensuring the health and safety requirements. The next slide, it talks now to the challenges in general when we talk about this project of identifying and making the quarantine sites functionally are available to be used as quarantine. The process of quarantine commences with directive and standard operating. Chair? Hello, Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm getting distracted by the background noise. I think there's mics that are unmuted.
Okay. Nola, can you please ensure that all the other mics are muted? Please.
Thank you,
Thank you, Chair. We'll do just that. I just want to plead with all the honourable members to switch off the TVs because they're giving feedback. It's feedback from the TV that we're receiving from this side.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Then now I'll only cover the challenges in general that we encounter as people who are involved in this project. The first one is the issue of process of quarantine started without the standard operating procedure. And then there was an intervention by the minister in that regard, where she was inducing on us to make sure that we develop the standard operating procedures. That process is almost finalized. That document was signed this morning from my side, and then it goes to the DG, and it will go to the minister as well. There is also a protocol document on roles of key stakeholders that includes public works, health, as well as tourism. The protocol document is also due today, that it must actually serve before the ministers of 4 departments. The terms and conditions upon which the negotiated rates for private hospital was based, problematic one is the issue of paying for the whole hotel, regardless of the occupancy level. That is what we have been having a problem with. I think the second bullet, that matter has been addressed since. And we are saying that we are trying to negotiate with hotels, but there are those ones that are not amenable to, they would want us to take the whole hotel. And then there are also challenges around the issues of the flights that are coming through, carrying the repatriates coming back home. And that matter was also raised at the NAT joint to say that at least we must be given 72 hours lead time to arrange the quarantine facilities so that we can have that one run smoothly. The people checking in hotels to self-quarantine, there were some such cases, but what we have advised the hotels is that it must not be at the government expense, that somebody will just wake up and decide to go to a hotel and check himself or herself in self-quarantine. And also agencies calling hotels claiming to be acting on behalf of government, that also we're actually engaging the hotels, and then it will be on the service level agreement, that which we are currently revising. People in quarantine facilities, that's also a challenge, released prematurely before the expiry of the prescribed 14-day period. That is a concern that which also we have raised with the NAT joint, but it was emphasized that the 14-day period should be observed by all those ones who have been taken to quarantine facilities. But there are still in some cases where such is not really implemented. And it has an implication on the issues of the contract itself. When we sign the contract, it must actually be able to reflect that it is for this period. Now, if people get released before that period, it makes contractual arrangements to be compromised. Some provinces do not implement mandatory quarantine for people coming through the land port of entry. One example is the province of Limpopo, that which have been, and then also Free State. But they've been cooperating. We still have a bit of a challenge with the Limpopo province, but that has also been brought to the attention of the NAT joint. Basically, that is all that which I try to rush through. I hope I've given justice to the presentation. Thanks, Chair.
Chair, should we get to the next one? We're awaiting guidance from the chair.
Can we agree? Can we agree then, as the co-chair, that you go to the next presentation?
Okay. Thanks very much, Honorable Chair. Can we ask Mr. Pillay to take us through the EPWP one? Whilst we are still working on the bed bridge one, they are still putting it in my computer here. Mr.
Thank you,
Pillay.
DG. Good afternoon, chairpersons, members of the Portfolio Committee, members of the Select Committee, Minister and DM, DG. I will try to do this presentation very quickly within the 10 minutes. Is it visible on the screen?
It is now.
Sure.
Yes, it is.
It is. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go to slide 3 immediately. Just to give you a very quick background, the presentation that we're making is exclusively to the National Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, EPWP branch intervention. We have not yet consolidated the actions of various other public bodies that are implementing EPWP during as part of the COVID-19 response. This will be done within the next 2 days. On Wednesday or so, we need to present a comprehensive picture to the working stream on economics to give them an indication of the scope and extent and the various sectors within which EPWP is functioning. So just to recap, this is only a presentation on DPWI's intervention. And the intervention started around the 18th of March when we got a request from NatJoins to develop a youth brigade to assist in quarantine sites. On the 20th of March, there was a discussion among several government departments on the Department of Health's hygiene strategy, which was at a draft at that point. Following the discussions, it emerged that the Department of Health does not have support to roll out the hygiene strategy from an educational perspective, and it was then agreed that EPWP will assist in this regard. So around the same time, we began to map EPWP's activities. We decided that the best intervention is through the EPWP non-state sector NPO program, which is implemented through the Independent Development Trust. And this program has been running for the past 10 years, and we've implemented it exactly the same methodology as we've implemented it the previous years, which is IDT contracts with NPOs, and NPOs then contract with participants closest to the place of work. Initially, we looked at about 136 NPOs across the country, covering the 44 districts and the 8 metros. Of around 150 participants per NPO, and we came up with a figure of 20,400. Soon after that, Minister advised that through a directive that she'd prefer higher numbers, and she directed we look at 25,000. So the 25,000 is basically recruited across, once again, the 44 districts and the 8 metros. They are focusing per district is around 460 odd participants. Just in summary, to date, we've contracted 170 NPOs. There's 20 still that needs to confirm. We've recruited just over 22,000 participants. The current wage level that we are paying is as per the ministerial directive and in line with the NSS NPO program of 101 Rand per day. DPWI will be the employer of this initiative, and hence we are providing personal protective equipment for all participants. In the main, it's masks, hand sanitizers, and gloves. The driver behind this initiative is the Department of Health. The EPWP is simply providing participants with protective gear to assist the Department of Health in its initiatives. And as I mentioned earlier, it's linked to the educational campaign. And I'll speak through the other 2 issues in the next slide. So if we go down here on the slide here, you look at there's a breakdown of the number of NPOs that we've targeting per province. the number of participants targeted per province, and the third column gives you our current recruitment as we stand. Now, this is the three key activities that will be involved in. The first, as I mentioned, is the hygiene strategy. The second and third activities, which is tracking of contacts and triaging, are linked to activities within the screening activities of Department of Health. We engaged the Department of Health quite extensively before we brought in the participants to ensure, one, participants are safe during these activities and any engagements they have with the community. Two, they needed to work under the supervision of either a health professional or a community health worker who's very knowledgeable about these areas. So essentially, DPWI, EPWP participants will be supporting and providing administrative support to these activities. Now, some of the key risks we've identified is one, which initially emerged, was the availability of protective gear for the participants. We've been able to overcome that so far. We started the process of procuring PPEs. The next issue is on training for the EPWP participants. One of the fundamental trainings they will undergo prior to actually starting any activities on the ground speaks to preventative measures. So EPWP participants will be taught how to prevent themselves from being infected. There's also a link to other activities around the hygiene strategy, which they will then use for themselves, but also communicate that to members of the community. And they'll also, thirdly, be trained on the actual activities that they are required to perform. Now, there is always the possibility of an EPWP participant being infected while undertaking these activities. So we've aligned our response to the Department of Employment and Labor's occupational health safety regulations on COVID-19, where if someone is infected in the workplace, they are eligible to claim through QIDA. To be proactive in this regard, we've already paid QIDA upfront the monies that are required to cover these participants. The third area that's quite crucial in terms of risks is, and it still is happening at the moment, is there seems to be a disconnect between the National Department of Health's activities versus the Provincial Department of Health activities. We've communicated this to colleagues at the Department of Health around the 24th, because it seems as though provinces are doing very similar activities or busy recruiting for very similar activities that the EPWP national intervention seeks to respond to. So there's an engagement currently, as we speak now, with the Department of Health on these matters. And the next slide speaks to the implementation plan. As I've mentioned, this initiative is driven by the Department of Health. We've provided them so far with the 22,000 participants that we have. They are currently working on a deployment plan in terms of the three activities I've mentioned. The deployment plan hopefully will be ready within the next day or two. It was to have been developed by last week. So all of the activities that I speak to in the next two slides are linked to the readiness of the Department of Health to deploy EPWP participants. The next slide speaks to the issue of payment of EPWP participants during the lockdown. The minister correctly was very concerned that during the lockdown, EPWP participants who are from the very poorest of poor households in our country may be left in a worse off situation during the lockdown if they are not paid. So Minister issued a directive around the 26th of March instructing that all EPWP participants that have a valid contract during the lockdown should be paid. However, subsequent to that, the Department of Labour released the Temporary Employees Relief Scheme, and this provides for any worker that has contributed to UIF to benefit from the scheme. EPWP participants, as you're aware, all contribute to UIF, so hence they become eligible for this benefit. I think it's important to point out that in terms of TERS, workers earning the minimum wage, which is 3,500 and below, will earn their full wage, and persons that earn above 3,500 start on a sliding scale to a maximum of 17,000. So it is our view that the EPWP participants should receive full wage in this regard. So currently there's a process internally in the department to align these two things. Chairperson, in summary, thank you. That is my presentation. I just asked the committee to note and to support what we've presented so far.
Thank you very much, Mr. Devon. Honorable Chair, we'll proceed now to the Beitbridge border fence presentation, which is going to be undertaken by DDG Watu Muhutu. Watu, you can proceed.
Great. You can proceed.
Chair, just member Wayne Thring here. I'm concerned that one, we may have lost our chair, and then two, the presentation is actually not coming up on my screen. I don't know whether other members are having the same problem.
Honorable, yeah, we lost me a little bit. I'm in the rural area, so we lost network. But I'm back now. Can you please, DG, ensure that the presentation, we see them on our screen? And can we go to the last presentation, please?
Okay, we are ready. We are ready. We are going to proceed to the next presentation. Devon, you should remove yours. Devon, remove your presentation. Okay, thank you very much. Batu, you can proceed. We can't hear you, Batu.
Okay, thank you. I hope I'm audible now. Good afternoon, Honorable Chair, Honorable members, Honorable Minister, Honorable DM, DG, and colleagues. I am sharing the presentation now, and I hope it's visible. I will focus on 7 key slides due to the interest of time. I will take the meeting through the executive summary, which is on slide 4.
Excuse me, but I don't see the presentation. I don't know whether other members do see it. Honorable String, can you see the presentation now?
Yeah.
Chair, no, I can't. But what I've now done is I've actually loaded it onto my laptop, so I'm viewing it from the laptop, the presentation that was sent earlier. But I can't see it on my screen.
I know, even on my screen, I can't see any presentation.
I can see it. Let's check with other honorable members.
I can see
the presentation. Yeah, no, it's visible. But
I
you can make
see
it bigger.
I can see it.
But to just make it bigger, maybe.
Maybe let me just use the one that I have. I think, Honorable String, let's do what you are doing. We use the information that was sent to us, because I can't see it. But can you please continue in the interest of time?
Continue, Batu.
Thank you. Just to give honorable members some background to this project. Pre-1994, SNDF constructed and maintained the borderline fence. And in the mid-90s, SNDF ceased from doing that function after 1994. Then the Department of Agriculture then took over the construction and maintenance of the border fences and recovered the maintenance costs from the Department of Public Works until 2005. The department is then currently in the early planning stages of upgrading all the borderline fences and the patrol roads, which are not in a good condition. And this work will comprise of the RSA, Swaziland, Mozambique, which is broken up into phase A and phase B according to town planning services. It's 54 kilometers for phase A, 500 kilometers for phase B. Then RSA Zimbabwe is 700 kilometers according to town planning services. And RSA and Lesotho is 600 kilometers in accordance to town planning services, as they are busy with the site clearances in order for these projects to be upgraded and registered accordingly. In January 2020, this year, SNDF sponsored a negative publication, and it said that the conditions of our borderlines, particularly between South Africa and Zimbabwe, is in a bad condition. The department then responded by going to the site together with the Department of Defense in January 2020. And from that meeting, a technical committee was then established, in which a decision was then taken that provisional site clearance for maintenance must then be issued to maintain the existing borderline fence, while we're still waiting for the bigger project that is still in the early stages of town planning. However, we're overtaken by events as a national state of disaster was then declared by the Honorable President. Following that, the Minister of Public Works invoked Section 27(2) of the Disaster Management Act. After that, the Minister issued a directive on the 16th of March for emergency securing of the borderline fence. There are three salient parts in this directive. Number one, the contractor must be on site by the 20th of March 2020. Number two, that a site visit must take place by the 18th of March, and consideration of a VO process under this emergency situation. The slide number 4, as I've indicated, honorable members, just takes us through the executive summary, and I've given pretty much time on the background. And in the presentation, I will take us through the different components. And just to also say that the project currently as we speak was completed on time and completed within budget. I'll also take through, honorable members, the different cost comparisons of fences, so we get a feel of how much do fences cost in South Africa. And then I'll also provide a way forward. I am going to take us through the sections that I've mentioned. The emergency procurement was then embarked upon by the Department of Public Works under this disaster situation that we found ourselves in. The procurement strategy used was the negotiated procurement strategy. The most important part for us to note, honorable members, is that this contract, it is premised on the existing contract of the Beitbridge Land Port of Entry. By that, I mean that the Land Port of Entry existing contract was predetermined through a competitive bidding process, and the bidder then had activities and rates that were predetermined through a competitive bidding process. Now, these rates are considered scheduled rates, and this contract that was used baselined on the scheduled rates, which were predetermined by the market. If we look at the slide 11, we can see a comparison that has been done. If we take and inflate the schedule rates by CPI, we escalate rather by CPI at 4%, we get a figure of 39 million. If we escalate the baseline by CPAP, you get a figure of 38 million. The tender sum was 37 million. What this gives us the indication that we are within the market reasonability because we are actually below CPI and we are below the contract price adjustment of CPAP by 37 million. Honorable members, I will go through the slides to slide 15. Slide 15 gives us a context of the type of fence that has been installed by the defense. Here we see that the fence is of a similar nature, which has been provided by this contract, this project. In fact, the site clearance that was issued was for maintenance, for us to upkeep the fence as it was in a bad condition. And if we take the honorable members to site, and I hope we have that opportunity to do so, we will then travel the span of the borderline to see exactly what type of infrastructure is there, as we can also see the patrol roads are in need of upgrading, and also the fence is also in need of upgrading. That is why there is this project that is planned, as I initially mentioned in the background, which will address these issues and these challenges. Slide number 17 takes us through what plant and site workers the contractor used. The contractor in question comes by the name of Caledon River Properties, Pty Ltd, trading as Mahua Construction. This contractor had to hire plant, had to mobilize workers to be able to complete this project, which was done within a period of 1 month. We have plants such as TLB, Bobcat, additional graders were provided, 22-ton excavators as listed. The labor force that was on site included the contractor's personal staff, 18 men, subcontractors, 50 men. Then workers were sourced from Musina local municipality, 160. And then the security personnel were around 40. The security on the site had to be very strategic and tactical to ensure that the contractor is not delayed in any way. He had 40 men that were deployed on site in the evening between 6 and 6 in the morning. Honorable members, I would like to take you through the next slide, which shows the subcontractors that were employed. In the production, you have to look at the entire value chain of the fence, from the raw material, from the mill to where it goes to manufacturing, and then it gets transported. And when it arrives on site, it's quality checked. Once it's quality checked, it's stored, and then it is distributed depending on the sections that the contractor will be working on. The next slide, which is number 24, shows a typical program of how the contractor managed to squeeze in this job in a short space of time. He worked through 5-kilometer sections of the work, and in this particular instance, it shows how he started programming the work from the beginning until the 20th of April when practical completion was obtained. Honorable members, in any project, we have 3 levels of completion. The first completion is called, as we are familiar, is practical completion, which took place on the 20th of April. Then the snag list is developed if there are minor things that have to be done. In our case, there was a snag list, and the contractor was given until the 24th of April to complete those items. He indeed completed them, and on the 28th of April, the works completion was then taken. From the works completion, what we have is a 12-month latent defects period, whereby if there's any imperfection of the material or poor workmanship that is discovered, the contractor will come back and repair at his or her own cost. After the 12 months, then we take the final completion. Slide number 30 takes us through a high-level cost comparison for honorable members to get a feel of how much do fences cost per meter in South Africa. The first is this project, which at final account it is anticipated that it will cost less than 37 million, and the estimated cost per meter will be 850. Just to explain the aspect of final account is due 14 days after the works completion. The team is working together with the appointed principal agent. By the team, I mean DPWI engineers, to make sure that the value for money and all the other queries that were raised, that we don't have any comebacks, and the team is working diligently. Now, the second table makes reference to the high security fence. The high security fence is also shown on the next slide. And for us to put a fence of this nature, it will cost us 4,200 Rand per meter. It approximated in that fashion. Then the last fence is a game fence. This fence without electrification will cost about 200 Rand per meter. And if we electrify, that component alone is approximated at 300, which will then take the electrified game fence to be 500 Rand per meter. Honorable members, I will then go through to the last slide, which gives a way forward in terms of what is the Department of Public Works doing now with regards to the fence. First of all, we are putting together a maintenance approach to keep the fence, as it was at completion. Upkeeping of that fence, that process is underway. We have communicated with the defense to intensify patrol at the borderline fence between RSA and Zimbabwe. We have communicated with defense that we have to complete and conclude agreements between the two departments to clarify the role and responsibility of the borderline infrastructure. And also we have communicated to defense that a military alliance or treaty is essential to manage illegal crossings, as our borderline infrastructure is only as good as the ability to manage illegal crossings. Honorable members, I will then pause at this point and take questions.
Thank you very much, honorable members. We are done.
I think the Honourable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee is currently experiencing connection problems due to network issues. So we would like to request the Honourable Co-Chair from the Select Committee to lead us through the question session.
Thank you, Nola. We will then take this opportunity to express our appreciation to the team led by the DG. We will then check the list of members that would want to engage with the department, so that at least there is a flow of discussion and a flow of engagement. If I can just be helped with the list of NA members, so that what I'll request Nola to do, just you'll manage that part for me. The list of NA members. What I will do, I'll request that we take the first 3 NA members, and then go to the first 3 NCOP members, and then we flow in that fashion. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. I see my chat icon is disabled. So I can't communicate.
That is the reason why I said let Nola help us, because I could see that the chat is experiencing problems. So let's start with the NA members, the first 3 NA members, and then we'll go to the first 3 select committee members. Can you know them, Nola? Can you recognize them?
Thank you, Chairperson. I'd like to recognize the Honourable Mjobo, the Honourable Van Schalkwyk, and the Honourable Mashele from the Portfolio Committee to go first.
Let's move in that fashion.
Does the Honourable Mjobo have any question?
Let's go to the next one.
Okay, next on the list is the Honourable Van Schalkwyk.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, you are, Sharon.
A good day, co-chairperson, members, and the department. Thank you very much for the presentations. It's really insightful, the info that has been distributed. Without wasting time, Chair, I want to start with the last presentation on the Beitbridge issue. Can you, the department, give us a clarification? We've seen the photographs there, and it's stating the different dates, 2004 and 2007. But I didn't see any recent photographs before the actual fencing took place. So can we get an indication of if there are recent photographs? The other issue, Chair, is in terms of the EPWPs. We acknowledge that they will be paid the 101 Rand per person per day, but I need to know, will that be going to the pockets of the employees, or is there additional funds that's going to the employers? Then in terms of the current EPWP workers who's now going to benefit from the UIF process, the TERS benefit, can we get an indication of how long they're going to benefit? Is it going to be for the entire lockdown period throughout all the levels, or is it just going to be for a limited period, noting that some of their contracts will be ending during the lockdown period? Then in terms of the quarantine sites, can we get an update as soon as possible, especially in terms of those numbers that's stating 0 in the Eastern Cape, so that we can monitor also in terms of where that numbers is going. Then when looking at the epicenter, which is the Western Cape, we see that 30 out of 172 were assessed and ready. But when we look at the occupancy, we see that it's only private institutions. Can we have a breakdown in terms of that so that we can know why they are only making use of private facilities for quarantine? Then also the last one is, can we get an indication and regular stats in terms of what's happening in terms of the provinces, those facilities that they've identified, so that we can have a national databases instead of only the national the national one is currently. Then we need to have a
thank you, Honorable Sharon.
Thank you, Chair.
Can you just hold that one?
Thank you, Chair.
Let's go to the next honorable member.
Next up, Chairperson, we've got the Honorable Mashele. Does the Honorable Mashele have any question? If not, we'll move to Honorable Chwaku.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, no, thank you very much. I've got a question. One, again, on the issue of the quality checks, because after you finish with the construction, you need to do a quality check. Who was the contractor that did the quality check and approved that work? Because when you approve it, you say it's fine, and then the people can be paid. Number two, can we get the breakdown of costs? Because this presentation doesn't tell us a breakdown, what happened properly. Actually, on the BOQ, there's no breakdown properly, step by step. And then the other one, especially on that Bait Bridge thing, is that I think that the portfolio committee must go there and do oversight and check. So let's not listen to hearsay on what say. Let us go there and check and do, because this is quite a lot of money. 37 million is quite a lot of money. We need to check if there's any some actually the value for money. It was going to be nice if we had a state company. If we have a state company, we're not going to be falling into this thing of the tenders. So it would be very nice that ITT can be converted in one of the state companies. Now, on the issue of can you get a list of the NPOs for the EPWP? Can you get the list of the NPOs? Who are they? And how many each? How many have they put in, so that we're able to check and go and do our own oversight? Yeah, one. So can you get that list? I don't know. Maybe you'll give us the guidance, Chair. When are we gonna get actually that? And also, there must be sort of a timeline, because it doesn't say what is happening. So okay, they're gonna be there's the recruitment, training. The time I say recruitment, training, and then so there must be a clear timeline. I didn't see that. I think that also this 101, this 101 per day is small. I think that I would recommend that maybe the department must actually do the review. And also remember, I don't know how long can they give us, how long are these EPWP working? Yeah, when I check for how long is it? Yeah. Sorry, how many minutes do I have now?
You are fine now. You'll have a second round, 1 minute second round for when we come back to you. Let's proceed to the first three members. Honorable Khai, and then Honorable Tim, and then Honorable Matebula. Let's move in that fashion.
Honorable Boshoff as well, please.
All right, Honorable Boshoff, noted.
Honorable Numala.
And Honorable Hickman, please.
Honorable members, we have agreed on an approach. We've started with the first three members of the NA. Now we are moving to the next three of the NCOP. Then we'll go to the next round of the NA members. Thank you, honorable members. Let's proceed for the sake of smooth running of the meeting. Honorable Khai.
Chair, can I ask quickly, how much time are we allocated? Is it per presentation or per all of them? Because we were given 3 minutes.
It will be 3 minutes per the whole presentation. That's why we said we are going to have a second round. We just want to make sure that we are more efficient of time. So we'll come
Okay,
back to you. Thank
cool.
you, Honorable Mayor. Honorable Khai?
Yeah, I hope I can start now. Thanks, Chair. I think the point that was raised by Honorable Chwako with regard to oversight visit, perhaps it should be a recommendation that must be taken to the House chairpersons so that they take up with the relevant structures. Because for now, okay, up until Thursday, people are allowed to go to their provinces, but after the 7th, nobody is allowed to go to another province. So I think it's a gray area that must be taken up with the House chairpersons so that it's taken up with government to allow members of parliament to conduct oversight visit, because that will mean they will have to go through other provinces other than their own provinces. Chair, I just wanted to ask on the quarantine facilities, whether once they are identified, are they being paid before they are occupied? Two, there's a quotation of a single and sharing room. Does that mean those who are being quarantined are allowed to share rooms? Is that okay health-wise? But also with regard, there was a list of lodges and hotels. I don't know whether the government is using its policy of triple BEE to ensure that also Black people benefit out of these facilities that are rented out to government. Also, the issue of the 14-day period of quarantine. Are people being tested after having after the 14 days has lapsed, or just before or they are just released because the 14 days has come to an end? The issue of the EPWP, I don't know how government works. You know, Department of Labor has what is called Employment Services of South Africa, where they have a database in their program of public employment service. Why doesn't then government departments go to Department of Labor in that particular database of Department of Labor and source people from that, because there are thousands in that database that are unemployed, but they put their profiles in that particular system. Because of time, thank you, Chair. I'll come back later.
Thank you, Honorable. Honorable Tim?
Chair, thank you very much. And I want to thank you very much for ensuring that we could join this meeting today. Thank you for your intervention in that regard. Chair, I'd like to just kick off with EPWP. Chair, I would like to remind colleagues about the entire purpose of the lockdown. The entire purpose of the lockdown over the first 5 weeks was to make sure that South Africa was ready to deal with a spike in infections, to make sure that we were ready from a health point of view, and Public Works was involved in that to make sure we were ready for a quarantine point of view. The info given to us today is that on the 27th of March, it was decided to use EPWP workers. We were told then in the same presentation that on the 27th of April, X amount were recruited. That indicates to me something very concerning, Chair, and that means that we are still not ready. We are still training people 5 weeks into the lockdown. We should have been ready a lot earlier than this to deal with the purpose of the lockdown. The purpose of the lockdown is not to carry on forever. So if I can get some response on that. Then when we go into the quarantine sites, Chair, I've written to the Minister asking for a list of all the provincial sites. Honourable Khai referred to oversight. And it's impossible for us in our areas where we live, where we work, our constituencies, to go and do oversight if we don't get a full list of all the provincial sites, so that we can ensure, as members of parliament, that these sites are actually suitable for quarantine or isolation purposes. This is borne out by the fact that many sites have come to light that are not suitable. For instance, the Zitibaseni site in Mpumalanga, which is certainly way below standard as it should be. And some of our colleagues have gone to do oversight there. Then on the border fence, Chair, Can the department tell us what the difference is between a COVID-19 fence as opposed to a normal fence? I don't understand the difference between those two fences. I didn't know there was a new type of fence called COVID-19 fence. If they could perhaps help us there. And then when did that, then finally, the budget allocation. I've also asked the Minister for a written question on the budget allocation. The slide that went out on the quarantine sites refers to a figure of 23 million and a figure of 25 million. 23 million was being spent on hotels, but only some hotels in Johannesburg and that, and the 5 million on EPW, on public work sites. Is that the full budget that's being spent on quarantine facilities, or is there a larger budget that is going to be spent? I need to have a figure of the amount that public works have set aside to identify and make available sites and the budget to be expended on the quarantine sites. I'll leave it there for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Tebula. Can we then go to Honorable Boshoff?
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon to everybody. I've been partially covered by Honorable Bartoseth, but to get back to the SABC quarantine facility in Mpumalanga, as he mentioned, people have done oversight there today, and what they found was very disturbing. So I think one should really request that the Select Committee and the Portfolio Committee does oversight there to determine where the problem lies. What I'd like to know with regard to this facility is, what is the rate that these people are hosted at, who pays, and to whom is the money paid? And then I'd also like to know, they spoke about Limpopo, that do not implement mandatory quarantine measures when people come through the borders. What has been done in this regard to address these challenges? And then the people that have been released prematurely from the quarantine centers, how many have been released prematurely? And on whose decision was that done? Because if there's a national mandate that somebody should be in a quarantine center for 14 days, who then decides, okay, they can leave after 7 days or 10 days or whatever? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Boshoff. We will go back to Honorable Njobo. Is Honorable Njobo back?
I would like to ask a question. Can you move my?
We have agreed on an approach, Honorable Mutsamai. Let's go back to Honorable Mchobo. I've noted you, Honorable Mutsamai. Is Honorable Mchobo back? Can we then go to Honorable Mutsamai? You are recognized, Honorable Mutsamai.
Yes, I just want to know after the president are the council. Police station, signature, police stamp. Marubona gore ke fraud and how bula ke or over to bula case kan tsa o tshwana le tsena a hona anything e etsahalang maponesa a ra ka kgono tswela ka bula case ka ntwe yana ke ntwe tshwentseng
Honorable Mutsamai
ya batla minister njwetso re tshwentse re etse ya wa nkutlwa Kere ke batla gore minister a njwetse gore gona le after president ana a bua after this thing ya corona virus gore a hona batho ba ba tshwentseng ba ye mesebetsing batho ba sentse ba be dintlong. Makgowa ke a suspendile batho gore ba ile ba ha ba tla mosebetsing, and mesebetsi ya teng ke company e etsang dibeke dibeke tse dikgolo tsena. Ha ke botsa gore why ba suspenda batho ba re no batho ba tla mosebetsing, ke re company ya gago ne e sa tshwanela ho sebetsa. O mpontsha permit e tswang ko police station, ke re no police station ha e etse di-permit tsa mesebetsi. Then no, those people, let's go to meet in court. Ke ntho tse tshwantse di etswe yang ha lekgowa le tjho jwalo.
Re go tlile ra leboga Honorable Motsamai. We will then go back to the NA side. Is Honorable Mashele, then Honorable Shabalala, then Honorable Kopane. Let's move in that fashion.
Apologies, Chair. Chair. Honorable Kopane is not available. We did allude to her apology earlier on. Honorable on standby. I'm not sure if he wants to ask his question now or during the second round, but there are other members from the portfolio committee that also indicated that they would like to ask questions.
Yeah, can you cite those names so that we can then proceed in that fashion?
Thanks, Joe. We've got Honorable Siwisa, Honorable Thring, Honorable Hicklin, and Honorable Graham, as well as Honorable Numar. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Let's proceed in that fashion. 3 of them, and then we'll then go back to the NCOP list. Honorable Siwisa, you're on the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Chair. My question will be on the EPWP volunteers and recruits. That they have they themselves been screened and have they received treatment or training? In fact, will they be working alone or in the presence of medical practitioners? I think that one has been answered to me. My other question based on that again is that there's assistance in the case that participants get infected. That has been addressed. But the question that we need to look into is, are their families going to be assisted? Have these volunteers and recruits have been given counseling pertaining the work that they are going to do? Because this whole thing is very traumatizing, even for a person that only tests positive. So have they been given the proper counseling? The other question will be on the identification of NPOs. What criteria was used to identify all of those NPOs, and what do they know what their role is going to be? Because we already know that in the DPWI, we already have a problem of NPOs that we don't know whether they exist or not. And then coming to the Bay Bridge, why did it have to take the Department of Defense to make a discovery that the state of the fence is not proper? Because one of the mandates of public works is that they need to do constant maintenance of any infrastructure that belongs to them. So in this case, we had to go over a department has to go and see that the fence is not proper. And you ask yourself, how long has that fence not been like that? For it only to come into light in January that now an emergency funding has to be brought up to address the fence of Bay Bridge. And then you get that there are different codes for different fences. A fence is a fence. Its purpose is the same, to keep people out. Now we are being given a presentation of different fences with different quotations, and we need to find out as to, from the Department of Public Works, why did it have to take the Department of Defense to make sure that the fence is actually proper or not? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Siwisa. Honorable Thring.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, we firstly want to note the condolences and offer our condolences and prayers to the Honorable Matabula from our Portfolio Committee on his loss. My questions, Chair, are with regards to the quarantine site. Firstly, 795 private sites have been identified, as opposed to 612 state sites. The rental cost for the 14 privately owned facilities is some 28.6 million. Would this money not have been better put to use upgrading our state sites and using state sites rather than pumping this money into the private sector sites? Now, this would require an updated, detailed, complete asset register, which this committee has been discussing at length. The next question on the properties then is, does this asset register exist? And following on that, why are there 44 operating facilities in KwaZulu-Natal as compared to 15 in Gauteng and 19 in the Western Cape, when the latter two provinces have higher infection rates than KwaZulu-Natal? Public Works Infrastructure has the largest property portfolio in the country. But how many building structures belonging to the state are being currently used to install 5G antennas? And has the risk health analysis been conducted before approval, noting that the scientific evidence proving the harmful effects of 5G on workers, children, families, in the population in general? And then, how effective has the erection of the Bait border fence been between South Africa and Zimbabwe? That is, in preventing illegal immigrants gaining access to South Africa. And then, what other measures or interventions have been set in place to secure our ports and borders? And then finally, Chair, I think that the ACDP notes the ministerial directive to recruit 25,000 EPWP participants, predominantly youth, on 101 Rand per day to assist the quarantine sites. Now, while these initiatives to boost our employment are welcome, it pales in comparison to the approximately 400, 500,000 to 1 million that may lose their jobs after lockdown. Our national deficit is set to widen to 6 to 12%, and our debt to GDP set to grow to some 12 to 8, some 80%. The restrictions on our economy appear to be
thank you, Honorable
of destroying the economy, causing more hunger, employment, and poverty than COVID-19. So that's a statement following my questions. Thank you, Chair.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Can we then go back to, is Honorable Njobo back on the line?
Honorable Mashele is back.
Okay, Honorable Mashele, you can hit the ground running.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Let me start with the Bait Bridge issue. I think it would be better that the portfolio committee should find time to go and visit the site. On the issue of EPWP, I think we must try by all means as government to make sure that these people are protected. We know that we're talking about highly vulnerable people and NGOs and NPOs. Now, because they're unemployed and poor, they are going to take anything that comes their way. So it should be the responsibility of government to close that gap and make sure that they are protected. I see the remuneration of 101. The question would be how much goes to the person, because if that 101 goes to the institution that recruited the person, surely the institution will have an interest in taking a cut there. So we must know how much goes to this particular person who's rendering the service. On the issue of the quarantine sites, I think probably the department should explore an avenue of using university residencies, boarding schools, and all probably government facilities. Schools are not operating now. You have boarding schools. And when you look at the numbers, it's not quite large numbers, even if it can be. If government goes to a school and buy beds, it will be an investment to that particular school. It's government money. If the department spends money in getting proper beds for these people, I think it's worth it. Equally, I look at the presentation there, it speaks about hotels and all that. Seemingly, those are big hotels. Why don't we explore an avenue of looking at small lodges and guest houses? Probably the price will be much better and will be empowering the smaller people in the industry. Get into them.
We seems to have lost you, Honorable Mashele.
It's fine because he's over 2 minutes already. He must go. Yeah, you actually gave us, Chairperson. You only gave us 1 minute, 1 minute 30 seconds, but you let him speak all the way. I'm timing everyone here. You must not do that, please. We will still have we still have questions as well.
Yeah, no, we are going to have another round. Let's then go to Honorable Landsman, and then Honorable Lond, and then Honorable Dango.
Honorable, sorry.
Chair, Honorable, can you recognize me?
Yeah, no, you are on my list. You are on my list, Honorable.
Sorry,
Yes.
I just want to raise something here. There was a list.
Thank you,
Yes,
Chase Beck. Thank you, Chase Beck.
I lost the network previously, but I'm back now. I had Nola raising names that have to speak. I don't think that list is finished. We agreed that no one is going to raise his or her hand in the meeting, the list that we are using. So far, now I've had Honorable Suisa and Honorable Mashele. I heard you saying 3. I think we need to get someone, a third person from the members of the NA. Thank you. Before Honorable Langsman comes in. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let's then get Honorable Henkel.
Thank you. The next one on the list. Thank you very much, Chair. I have largely been covered, but I'd like to just rephrase it in a couple of ways. The mutable asset register has been mandated by, and many of the issues that we find in quarantine sites would have been addressed had we had a proper immovable asset register. This thing of 72 hours notice, where people at quarantine sites are notified that people are coming in, is not being adhered to. Also, the potential sites, the list of potential sites that was drawn up, was any oversight actually done on those sites prior to that list being drawn up? And the Zitibizeni is a perfect example that no one actually did oversight, because had they done oversight, they would have realized that that site was absolutely not ready to be used as a quarantine purpose. The SOP on lockdowns has not been finalized. We had a state of emergency and lockdown announced on the 17th of March. We are sitting on the 4th of May. We do not have an SOP. I don't understand why there's no protocol as yet. The choosing of private establishments and the letting out of people prior to the 14-day quarantine period. Good medical clinical practice determines that people who have come into the country have already been in quarantine, they land in quarantine, they are in quarantine for a good 5 days before they are tested. If they test negative for a second time, they can be allowed to be self-quarantined at home. That is good clinical practice. There is absolutely no need to hold people in a facility if they are able to self-quarantine. That is a worldwide standard. And we are forcing people into a situation that is foreign to them. They are already stressed when good clinical practice determines that they can self-quarantine at home. And then the next and final question for me is the rate paid, that we know that the rate paid to the hotels is astronomical. What is the rate paid to either state or provincial facilities? And who decides on what those facilities are? And are the public, the private facilities that are being used, are they paid in full prior to the people actually arriving there? Because that doesn't make financial sense on any level. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Can I
Chairperson,
request the Chairperson to proceed?
Chairperson.
Because I was holding the fort in the absence of the Chair.
Chairperson.
Proceed, yes.
I wanted to ask something. How many minutes are we having? Because other minutes and other members are given 1 minute, others are given 3 minutes. How many minutes? Can you just come up with a minute? So how many minutes? Or are we going to have a second round? Because we still have questions. We've actually hurried us very quickly without actually getting finished. You're giving other people 3 minutes. Can you just rule out in terms of how many minutes are we having?
Honorable Dobongwana, we have agreed on 3 minutes. But I wanted to propose that because I was holding the fort in the absence of the chair, and I humbly request Honorable Dobongwana to continue chairing the session. Thank you, Honorable Dobongwana. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Honorable Maimang. Thank you for holding the fort. We still need universal access of internet. Nola, can you call upon the 3 names from the NCOP that are going to speak now?
Thank you, Chair. I do not have the list from the NCOP, and I've asked my colleague to assist with that. But I think the Honourable Chairperson from the Select Committee had mentioned names of the members who would like to ask questions. So I think we should follow in that fashion.
Thank you, Chair. It was Honourable Lansman, and then Honourable Lond, and then Honourable Dango, that fashion.
Okay. Can we allow then those members to come in that fashion? We are not going to call someone, please. And we will be using 2 minutes, honourable members, looking at the time that at 4 we're supposed to be out of here, and we still expect the department to respond in your questions. So we'll have a stopwatch. Honourable Landsman, please come in 2 minutes, honourable member.
I'm covered, Chair. I'm covered.
The one following him.
Thank you. It's a shame that the Minister is not on this meeting to address this directly. Chairperson, we did raise in the past the issue of the political principles not here, and I assume that you will convey the stance of the Select Committee. But I'm asking this question specifically from a Western Cape point of view, but I'm sure it's applicable across the country. Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Apologies for that. Hello, Minister. Well, that's great. There's a list of properties that's needed by local authorities, municipalities, that was sent through the department. Short and sweet answer, by when will the release of these properties happen so that the municipalities can utilize this to help address this crisis that we are in? Thank you.
The one following, Honourable.
Honourable Dango.
Thank you, Chairperson. I just received an apology from Honourable Dango. It's Klupega.
Okay, thank you. Then, Nola, can you please read the names from the National Assembly, the Portfolio Committee, please? It's 2 minutes only.
Thank you, Chair. We've got the Honourable Graham, Honourable Van Staden, and Honourable Numalo. Then thereafter, it'll be yourself, Chairperson.
Thank you.
You have got Honourable Hendricks.
Honourable Samantha. Graham, sorry. Honourable Graham.
Thank you, Chair. I'm starting off on the fence. I want to know on what basis was it decided to replicate the old fence, given that that fence erected in 2007, according to the pictures that we got, was completely removed. Surely somebody should have determined that this fence doesn't work and that this border and others require a more suitable fence design where necessary. The report also acknowledges that the fence was gone. That's on slide 8, 6A. Yet the program that we've been given allows for 8 days of fence removal per 5 kilometers. That means that they've calculated 64 days of work to remove the old fence. At what cost was that calculated, and why was that not removed from the programming when they established that there was no fence left? One of the justifications for the extremely high price tag was that the logistics of the site, as well as the very short time frame of the project, meant that labor and plant costs were higher. How could the contractor then afford the additional security within the costing of this project when this had not actually formed part of the initial bill of quantities? And if the agreed price was based on 2016 scheduled rates and only a 4% CPI increase was added, what were the justifications for this price in 2016, given that there were no time constraints at that stage? And then finally, we are covered for latent defects.